Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel Review Anything and Everything. And today we're getting into an unboxing of a board game. This is called the Marvel United series. Now, this is an older game at this point now that I'm jumping into it, but I wanted to kind of review this not only because I'm just getting into it, but also because I'm going to put a link in the description. Amazon kind of has these things set up in a way where sometimes they give package deals. So what you see in front of you is the original core set and expansion, though there are many expansions, but it comes with this Into the Spider-Verse expansion plus this Doctor Strange expansion character figure and cards. And this was all bundled under one price that you could purchase on Amazon. So the deal was actually very nice. Even at its regular price, the bundle is about $50. Normally these sets go for about like $35 each. So in that aspect, you're getting a significant deal, which would probably be somewhere around 70 to 80, well, maybe about $75, $80 for all of this. You're getting for about 50. But if you wait to kind of catch it on a Prime Day sale, just any kind of given sale, because I've seen it on sale just about a week ago, a little less than a week ago, and the whole set was about $32.99 on Amazon for all of it. So just wanted to kind of throw that out there. Like I said, link's going to be in the description below. If you don't happen to catch it on sale, it's still a good buy. Now, before getting into the unboxing, I'm just really doing an unboxing. I'm not going to really go over the full details of the game. But in this box I have cracked open already just to kind of read the instructions. That was really about it. And for the most part, I'm going to tell you that if you guys are familiar, if you're into board games and you're familiar with Sentinels of the Multiverse, which is a card-based game, this is also a more of a card-based game than I would call it a board game. But nonetheless, they all fit into the same categories. And Sentinels of the Multiverse actually works very similar. So if you're a fan of that, you probably would be a fan of this. I would say that this is a little more in relation to that based on what I've seen and looked up on this. This is a little more, I would say, I don't want to say it's easier for a younger crowd or like it's just an easier play necessarily because there's a lot going on here. But this has a lot going on with more of an easier understanding, while Sentinels of the Multiverse is not hard to understand, but it definitely sometimes the wording and things can get a little bit complex in terms of the layers of how things work. So, but in general, if you're familiar with that game, you will be familiar with this in terms of the style. So I'm going to open up this one first and just kind of show off the cards and the minifigures that come with it. Now, the minifigures in this set here is pretty much focusing on, sorry, trying to get this open here. This is focusing mostly on the Avengers pretty much, even though I can say that not all the Avengers characters that come in this set go hand in hand with the movie. It's more of just kind of like pick of the litter from just Avengers in general. So here you could see this is the instruction booklet. Kind of goes into a few things. It's not a heavy booklet, so I don't think the rules are that complicated. I breezed through the rules already. And pretty much the layout of the game is not too hard to figure out. It feels like there's a lot of moving pieces, but it doesn't feel that hard to figure out. One thing that I want to do also is I would like to show the back of the box. I just want to make sure that the cards and stuff that are in here don't spill out. So I just wanted to make sure that that was the case before I flip this upside down. So here you can pause it and read it for yourself. As far as the details go, pretty much that's your core of characters right there. Like I said, it is an Avengers base for the original. This is the first core set, and you can buy core sets and you can buy expansions, but you need a core set to actually play. The core sets consist of the Avengers one, which is this one, even though it doesn't title Avengers, but it's pretty much the Avengers, X-Men, and there's a Spider-Man one as well, that has like alternate versions of Spider-Man, but not the main Spider-Man because that's in this expansion set here. Um, so you can see the characters that come with this: Iron Man, Captain America, Black Widow, Hulk, Captain Marvel, Ant-Man, Wasp. The enemies are Red Skull, Ultron, and Taskmaster. I think throwing Taskmaster in there is a little offbeat, but I guess you could say he goes hand in hand with Black Widow only from the aspect of the movie. Otherwise, I don't think he was a primarily a Black Widow enemy, though he has challenged the Avengers in general, and you see aspects where he mimics Captain America, even Hawkeye and things of that sort usually. I'm surprised they didn't put Hawkeye in here because even though I wouldn't say Hawkeye is a main character in terms of on the Avengers, a standout character in the comics necessarily, like you would be one of the first people you would have thought of back in the days. Once the Avengers movies came out, the MCU movies, obviously top front, row characters, Hawkeye became one of them because he was one of the Avengers characters, including Black Widow. As far as a straight up Avengers front row character, it's almost like the original team that you would have thought was the top people of the Avengers kind of got rearranged once the movies came out. So yeah. Now just jumping into really quick, and I'm gonna try to keep this video short, even though most of my videos are never short. But here are the minifigures here. That's Black Widow. And some people decide to paint these, which I think is great. But at the same time, if you're not good at painting, you could just leave them as B, and the detail on them is very nice. Now, the color actually has a meaning behind it. The blue is the heroes, the red are the villains. And in later expansion sets, they'll have like a purple color to indicate anti-villain is the category that they call it. But essentially what it means is they can play as a villain or a hero. The Hulk, you see how a lot of these figures have these exaggerated kind of proportions where they're kind of small on the bottom and really big on the top with really big heads. Captain Marvel. Little side note, Captain Marvel to me seems like a cool character when it came to the comic books, relatively speaking, meaning she wasn't over the top, she wasn't overly popular, but you accepted her. And when she came in movie form, they made her like the most powerful person, kind of threw a lot of people off and left a bad taste in their mouth because that's not who she is. So, yeah, that was Wasp. I'm sorry. It goes Red Skull. And what's interesting, like I said, another comparison to Sentinels of the Multiverse and its original base set. Red Skull plays very similar to Baron Blade, which is your typical genius kind of villain who has all these schemes and plans and uses their intelligence to do things. That's kind of what Red Skull is a planner and a strategist in this game. So his card setup, his details on his villain card actually work in a specific way that has like a plan going on in the background that you have to race the timing to beat. The Taskmaster, Ultron, who definitely would go to be a Iron Man villain or a Ant-Man villain. Now in the comics, Ant-Man is the one who actually created him. In the MCU, it was Iron Man, so you can kind of view that as either or, but he's always been an Avengers enemy. And this is Ant-Man here. And obviously you can see they have him standing on a quarter, so it gives you that sense of his scale, which is actually really cool. The same way that Wasp is standing on a dice to give her that scale. So the idea is that they're really small and shrunken. You have location cards. You can pause and read the details on them for yourself. Avengers Tower, Stark's Lab, Central Park, Shield Headquarters, Shield Helicarrier, Times Square, New York Police Headquarters, Avengers Mansion, Avengers Tower. Did I start from Avengers Tower? Yes, I did. So they pretty much all center in New York. So this theme is pretty much all centered in this location. But when you get other ones, you'll see that they're centered in different places. Those villain cards here, essentially the run of the villains is the way it goes is would be a villain's turn, then it's each hero's turn. So say if it's your turn, then another person who's playing's turn, then it comes back to the villain again. And essentially, the way the villain works, here goes his stats depending on how many players you have playing, because this is a 1 to 4 player game, if I'm not mistaken. And someone like Red Skull, like I said, has this chart which it goes up along the way. And if he hits 20, you lose. There are other ways to lose as well, but for him, it's like he's got a kind of villainous plot that's going on. Like I said, very similar to if someone's played Sentinels of the Multiverse. Baron Blade also has a countdown timer in his design, but not all villains have that. Their BAM is another kind of ability that kind of usually hits everyone on the board or does some kind of direct damage. Overflow starts putting down civilians and thugs, I believe that they're called, or the villains. I think they're called thugs. For the thug tokens, here you see the setup for Taskmaster is a little different. And the way they get operated is it's like an automated system. Here goes Ultron. You can pause that read for yourself. Essentially, it's an automated system. So the way it works is you will draw on the villain's turn from their deck, and their deck will give them instructions on what to do. So essentially, it's like a play itself kind of thing. It's almost an automated or computer-based kind of system within the cards. Like I said, Sentinels of the Multiverse plays the exact same way for anyone who's familiar with that. And another thing that plays somewhat similar to that is the old Dungeons and Dragons Advanced adventure system, if anyone's familiar with that, that was more board game like with tiles, but it worked the same way where the enemy or the villains had cards that instructed what to do with them, like an automated system. So essentially, you would have this would be different cards go down here that would be for rescuing civilians, which was the little icon that I showed you there. The getting rid of thugs, which is the other opposing icon, and then another one that does some kind of other things. You have to clear at least 2 out of 3. All right, everybody. So we are back. There was a little pause, and essentially it ended up being a good news because my doorbell rang. That was family coming by to actually test play the game. So now this is going to go from an unboxing to a review. So let me first just finish off with what I was saying in regards to how the cards generally work. That this would be like the villain card, and it would have. I'm sorry, I actually last left off with this type of card right here. So what I'm going to do after playing it now is I'm going to do it like a little setup, and then that way I'll be able to go over these things a little bit easier. So let me just kind of jump into that and set that up real quick for you guys. All right, so kind of just jumping into this really quick with this really quick setup for how this would work. Essentially, what you would have is, and this is only a partial layout, you would have 6 locations going around this centerpiece here. And you would have the villain's card set up just like that. You would have the villain set up. And this is not the original setup way where when you have all 6 cards, the villain has to be opposite of where the heroes start. But nonetheless, they're just going to kind of really go over the general mechanics of the game. So one other thing too is I like to use a dice when it says determine what the starting point is out of the 6 locations you would have going around the little center map. I like to use just 6-sided dice to determine where the starting position is going to be. There's a little tidbit for you guys. Now, the way things work is essentially as you're playing, and I'm not going to really go over to the details in terms of like you having the setup, how many cards you have inside your hand, this and that, because that you'll be able to go over the instructions. But generally, based off the play, these cards here. So when you lay down the locations, the 6 locations, you'll put down the icons for the heroes and the thugs that you see here. So you can see here, there's 2 thugs and 1 hero. You would essentially put down the starting thugs and the starting civilians. They're actually called, I'm sorry. And you would put all the ones that fell to the icon. I'm not going to fill all of them up, but all the ones that fill up to the icons, there's the starting position. Once you start the game, that's not going to matter the silhouette that's underneath there, because now you're just going to apply them as the game tells you to do so. The villain starts off with health tokens like these. You put on the amount of them that's in relation to the characters, how many players are playing. So here it says you've got 2. Let me just bring it up, and you can pause this so that way when I say it, you would know what I'm talking about. I'll just bring that up. But where it says 2 players, he has 4 health, 3 players is 8, and 4 players is 11. So this right here is a little marker that comes with it. If you lose this, you could just use a dice instead, a small dice, but you put that on the 0 mark. And as his cards will cause him to take actions that will end up excuse me, that will end up progressing his plot in various things that he does. So on that card, he has 3 different things that he's capable of doing. Bam, which is almost like your general attack. Overflow, which means that if he does something that puts civilians or thugs out onto the board and they overflow where there's more of them supposed to go down than what's available for the slots on the card. So in this case, we have 4 slots. If it ends up going to where he's got to put a 5th one here, you would do the overflow, which usually involves some kind of damage or progressing the villain's plot on his little track. Also, at the beginning, you would start with he's got 6 threat cards, and most villains are going to have the same 6 threat cards that will go down. Now, here you see as a henchman, Madame Hydra, and that's her effect when Bam is activated, and we'll go over that in a moment. When Bam is activated, that up a little bit so you can see it there, and she gets 5 health. I'm not going to put the tokens down, but you get the idea. Here goes another one that says heroes in this adjacent location will receive 1 crisis token. A crisis token looks like that with the exclamation point on it. Sometimes when you build up crisis tokens on a character or on a board or in certain positions, what ends up happening is it triggers an effect later on that the villain might do. I'm going to put down another one here. You have Bob, Agent of Hydra. Hero starts their turn in this location. Heroes that start their turn in this location take 1 crisis token. So he has a health of 4. I'm going to put him down there as well. So the way it generally works is at the beginning of the turn, it would be the villain's turn. I'm going to I have Iron Man and Black Widow's decks right here. You're not going to see them on screen, but you don't need to see them on screen. I'm going to display how a turn works. So generally the way a turn will work is that you would draw the villain card and you're making a timeline story. So you got to have a place where you can put a long path of a timeline story. So you'll draw the villain first and then every 3 hero cards, and then you'll draw the villain's turn again. So the way it works is in that case, he has, let me put it up to the, if I can lift up the card. Okay. He's got 0 movement. So the first thing you resolve on him is you're going to move him 0, and meaning that he's not going to move at all. You move clockwise, so the same direction of that. The villain walks clockwise or moves clockwise around the board of the 6 locations. Like I said, imagine that there's 3 more locations going across around there to form a full circle. Because of space reasons, I'm not going to do all that. His next action is Bam. That means you will resolve his Bam action. In his case, it says deal 1 damage to each hero in the Red Skull's location and increase the fear track by 2. So the fear track is going to go up by 2. If there was a hero in his location spot, what's happening as far as them taking damage is you would take 1 card out of your hand, discard it onto the bottom of your deck pile. So like I said, I got piles here right next to me of Iron Man and Black Widow. They would have 4 cards in their hand to start. I would discard one of them, whichever one of my choosing, put it at the bottom of the pile. That's kind of how your health works. I'm not a big fan of how health works inside this game. I would rather have straight up health points like the way they have for them. And I would say essentially you could probably modify the game for that. But if you did, just be aware that you might end up dying a lot because you would probably need something close to 20 health for it to really make sense if you did mod it like in that way. But generally speaking, so that's what he would do to if anyone's in his square, but they're not in his tile or location. He has nothing else at the bottom of that, but sometime at the bottom of that, you'll have where it will tell him to place thugs and civilians. Next would be one of the heroes. So we'll say Iron Man goes first. Iron Man would get, that's called a hero, that's star. This icon right here is called a hero action, if I'm not mistaken. And so with that, he is able to put one of those hero tokens down here. Now, I'm not going to grab one of the hero tokens, but it looks that same symbol that I just showed you at the bottom of the card. You can put this down. If you fill all three of these hero tokens, what happens is you eliminate, let's assume that we filled out all three of them. You eliminate the threat card that's on here. And that threat card, then there would be a token on the side here of a skeleton icon that you could see here. It looks like that skeleton icon. You see that skeleton icon right there. That would be on there. When you eliminate a threat, that skeleton icon goes here. If you rescue a civilian, which requires one of those same hero action, I think it's called a hero action. Yeah, hero action. If you do one of those hero actions, and if I'm saying it wrong, that's fine. You correct me in the comments. But if you do one of star actions, which is hero action, you could use those to either satisfy the threat um, threat card on a location, which you have to use 3 of them, or you can use them to rescue a hero. If you rescue 9 heroes, you get rid of 4 threats. Essentially, what happens is you knock these out. Now, when you knock out one of them, let's assume you knocked out one of them. Now, the villain will now, instead of acting, because normally you would play 3 of your cards, 3 hero cards before you play the next villain card. Now it'll be 2 hero cards and then the next villain card because this speeds him up. You got to get rid of another one of these, and it doesn't matter which order you get rid of them. Another one of them, and then you can now attack him. Before that, you can't hit the villain directly. Now you can actually go straight for his life points at that stage of the game. Now, as far as resolving, let's see, threats, where like this one here shows the movement power. If he did have a movement on his thing instead of that 0 and he moved to 1 and he landed here, the first thing you would do would be resolve this movement power, because this one's activated by his movement, which says heroes in adjacent locations take 1 crisis token. Then you would do the BAM as the following maneuver. But now, let's assume now it's Black Widow's turn and she goes up. It says, look at the top card of the Master Plan deck, which is the villain's deck, and you may place it on the bottom. So the card that you look at on the top of the deck, and you can place it on the bottom of the deck. Pretty much a way of kind of navigating. If it's a really bad card, you put it at the bottom of the deck. Now, when you play this, besides for that effect, she gets to use a pool of his previous bottom effect, which is his like action, which is the hero action, and the attack action. So she now gets to use both of those for her turn. And then when Iron Man's turn comes up again, because you play 3 hero cards before you play the villain card, he would now be able to utilize her attack plus his 2 hero actions as a pool, meaning there's no order. You don't have to put them in any specific orders, whatever order you want to utilize them in. He cannot use the special effect of her card, but he just gets to use the bottom aspect. And then next would come Red Skull's turn again. So that's how things proceed. Now here in this card here, you see it says Red Skull will move 3 times. So if he was here like before and we would have gone 1, 2, 3, whatever the case is, and came back around to this next area here, it doesn't have BAM, so he doesn't use his BAM effect, which is essentially his attack effect. But what it does say here is that he's going to place civilians. So that area in the middle where it shows the arrow of movement or the bullseye is where he's on. And it means that one he's on gets 2 civilian tokens. The 2 adjacent to him get 1 and 1. So that's how that works as far as the turns go and everything. And as you play it and you go through, for the most part, it becomes really like a race of time, because the way you lose or the way you die is if all of your cards are empty and you don't have any cards in your hand, you have no cards in the deck, then you lose. Both of you lose if one of you loses. But here's the issue is that you have to play your cards. Every turn you have to play a card. So it's really a race against your deck running out. So with that being said, I'm going to pretty much go over my views on the game in general. Now, one thing I wanted to make note of before I kind of get into my overall opinion is I want to just kind of show how some of these cards are to give you a sense of the individual powers that characters have. Most of the time, I think they only have like about 3 special power moves. and the rest are just basic forms of attack, different combinations of attacks. There's attack, that's a move, attack and move, and you can put them in any order. You can move and attack or attack and move. It doesn't matter. Um, See all these right there. These are wild cards, meaning that counts for any three of those symbols if you want. And these are the special moves. In this case, for Iron Man, advanced combat analysis allows him to distribute 2 attack tokens amongst the heroes. That could be to himself or to someone else, or divide it up, one to one other hero, one to himself, however you want to mix it up. And the movement is what he does. This right here allows him to draw 3 cards until he has 3 in his hand. So if you're low on cards, you would use this. And then this one does the opposite of the one with the attack, except it gives you extra move options. And then with an attack icon, you can distribute those 2 move icons. So there's usually 3 special cards. Wanted to point that out because as I get into giving my opinion on the game, I'm going to compare this game, like I said, with my experience of any other game similar to it, is to Sentinels of the Multiverse, and even games like the Dungeons and Dragons Adventure system. I'm sorry, which, to be honest with you, even though the adventure system Dungeons and Dragons is no longer being produced, it's a pretty good comparison to this as well between those 2 of those kind of games. But first, I'm going to start with saying that when I look at this game in comparison to, say, Mutants and Masterminds, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, it's not as complicated or not as deep, but there's a lot more things going on here. Though Mutants and Masterminds, I'm sorry, not Mutants and Masterminds, I'm sorry, Sentinels of the Multiverse. I'm sorry about that. I apologize. Said the wrong game. Sentinels of the Multiverse. Sentinels of the Multiverse. Part of the reason why I got confused is because a game called Mutants and Masterminds actually made an expansion that used the mechanics of Sentinels of the Multiverse. So sorry about that. And I was just speaking on that before. Sentinels of the Multiverse is more of a like detailed kind of aspect to it, where that makes you feel like the heroes that you're playing as, you're those heroes. And I'm just using it as reference, and I'll give a perspective from this for those who haven't played any game like this. But for those who've played that type of game, um, that makes you feel like you are that hero. You have a deck of cards for that hero, similar to these, but the deck of cards don't have just a bunch of random different like attacks that are the same, but just different versions of it, like how these have an attack and a move, and mostly there's only 3 of the cards that are unique. Every card in that is unique, and it makes you feel like you're that hero because they're so different than every other hero. This case, each hero for the most part feels the same, other than their 3 unique cards. Every other thing, I'm sure some have different combinations where someone like Iron Man will have more hero action type cards I've seen than when I played with Hulk, and it seemed like he had less of those. But for the most part, their basic actions feel the exact same. And other than that, they don't feel that much different, other than their 3 specialized cards that have effects, to be honest with you. So it's a very bland aspect of distinguishing the heroes from each other. For the most part, if you play one hero, there's not that much difference. Some of them might change differently, and I don't know about expansion sets and how much they change up the characters, but for the most part, the game mechanics. But for the most part here, that is the case. Now, with that being said, it's still a fun game, but I feel like it's also one of the kind of games where once you understand how it goes, it's easy to get pay probably children who are under 14 to play this game as well if they're playing with an adult, because once you understand it in managing your character, an adult can manage everything else going around it in terms of when the environment is going to hurt you, when the enemy is going to hurt you, or anything of that sort. And the younger players could just simply play their character with their basic cards, and that's it. And your character really doesn't die until you really run out of cards completely. Even if you get KO'd is when you lose all the cards in your hand. And then the next turn that you start, you get back up, you draw 4 cards, and you start all over. So it really is easy for other people to learn, I think, in that aspect. In terms of it feeling like an in-depth, complicated game that makes you feel like, it has like a whole lot of strategy to it and this and that, I didn't get that vibe from it. It's fun, but I didn't get the vibe that it's very super in-depth. And I think with that being the case, it seems like a fun party game for people who don't know that much about, more detailed games that have a lot of numbers and a lot of things moving, a lot of more moving parts and stuff like that that get in deep. Even though this does have a lot of moving parts, if you are the one who's experienced playing, you can manage all those moving parts by yourself, and the other players can just enjoy playing. Um, as far as someone who's coming from a standpoint that hasn't played more complicated games or like games like Sentinels of the Multiverse and whatnot, or the D&D adventure system, which like I said is very similar, where it has a built-in mechanic where the dungeon and the monsters kind of play on their own, and you're it's a cooperative game where you guys are against the dungeon. Um, People who haven't played those kind of games, this is definitely lighthearted to jump into, and I think that they would find it fun to get into. If you're coming from the standard board games that people play, Monopoly, Risk, Sorry, things of those sorts, I think it's not hard for people to get into this game as well, as long as the one person who knows how to play handles all the moving parts, and the other players just play their hero deck, and that's it. You kind of help them, direct with them on what to do. Overall, I think it's a fun game. I think for the price also, it's definitely worth jumping into, especially if you can get this kind of combo set right here. I think it's definitely really worth jumping into because, like I said, I paid like $32.99 for this, got all of this. Even if you pay the base price without it being on sale, but the combo pack, you're paying $50 for all this, which is still good because, like I said, one set would go for about $35. Some of the expansions sometimes go for about $30 at normal price. And so you are getting that value regardless. Is it worth jumping into? I definitely say it is, especially if you've never played a system like this. And it could definitely be an introduction system to more complicated games that have a similar system, similar to Sentinels of the Multiverse, which that game had got redone. But even after they did the redo of it, I don't think that they're ever going to put more out for that game. But nonetheless, just throwing out there, games that you can jump into similarly. And I'm going to throw some links in the description for some of the other games that I have mentioned. Um, but I enjoyed it. I'm glad I got a chance to play before finishing the unboxing, so that way I was able to tell you guys the review on this game. It is pretty fast paced. It's not, I would say, on average, each game can run, once you get smooth with doing it, maybe like 30 minutes. It is pretty much cut and dry, straight to the chase. Do I think this game could have had more depth to it? Yes, I do. I do think that this game what would have benefited from this game, and this is the part where I'm going to kind of get a little bit of a critiquing aspect on it based on some of my other games I've played before. I definitely think that this game would have benefited from having hit points or health bar for the heroes. I think instead of it using the card system where you run out of cards and that's it, I think it would have benefited from that. I think it would have benefited from more unique cards rather than, just three unique cards in a person's deck. I think that it also would have benefited from a more active environment setup where some of the other games that I mentioned, the environment actually has a mind of its own, separate from the villain, where in this case, the environment really doesn't do anything. It's just a location for you to be on, which is kind of cool because in relation to Sentinels, where you don't actually walk around a board, and then obviously in the D&D adventure system, you are completely walking around a board. This cuts somewhere in between there where you have the little locations to walk around. So it's like a simulated miniature board setup of walking in a circle. That part's cool, but I do think that this game would have benefited from a environment system that would have actually interacted with the heroes in some way. I know they put in the thug in the and the civilian cards, token to try to make it feel like you're stopping street thugs going around and you're saving civilians on the streets as well, but it doesn't play out in a way that feels very thematic at all. When it comes to that, it just feels like something that you have to just get it out the way, hit one of the thugs or save one of the civilians. It doesn't come off in that manner where it makes you really feel like you're doing something, where in some other games the environment might make you do a task that, even though it's one action, the thematicness of it, the details on the card or whatever the case is, like I said in Sentinels, would make you feel like you're doing a little adventure in that one moment that the environment card would drop, and you would do the instructions on the card. It might say something like you're being attacked by this creature, or this bridge just fell. You had to save it, and now you have to minus something on your character, or something happened. So it gives this context of something's happening, and you had to react to it. And even though it's a one turn or one action little event, it still gives that sense of that something occurred. Where here, you going after the thug is just go after the thug to complete the what are these called again? I'm sorry, give me 1 second. Challenge, the challenge threats, I think they're called. So or whatever they're called. I forget the moment, but on the dashboard here to like the rescuing civilians. I guess we'll just call it, or defeating the thugs. It when you do that, it doesn't feel like a little event that happened. It's just go hit them, hit the token, and that's it. So if you get what I'm trying to say there, that those are things that they could have changed where it would have made it feel a little bit more stand out. But as is, I think it's a fun game. I think it's definitely a kind of game that, like I said, you could jump in with friends and family, and it wouldn't be hard for them to get. Yeah, and that's my thoughts on it. As always, you guys like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'm gonna have the links down below in the description. I'll catch you guys in the next video.